There are a lot of people taking shots at the SEC right now. But when you take a look at the numbers, it just doesn't add up.
You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Just a Sec podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Smith, and today I'm taking aim. I'm coming at all you people that keep coming at us, the fans of teams in the Southeastern Conference, telling us our conference is weak. Football, basketball. Nobody's really stupid enough to say it about baseball because let's just be serious here. But I'm going to take a little deep dive into the numbers today and tell you why these people who are taking these shots have no idea what they're talking about. I want to start over on the football side of things. And I figured, what does the NFL say, right? What does the NFL say? Because if the SEC was down, if the SEC was overrated, if the SEC was not the premier conference in college football, then surely NFL GMs would feel the same way. NFL owners would feel the same way. The NFL wouldn't be littered with talent and players from a conference that was overrated because they would get exposed once they got up to the big leagues. If you've ever watched one game in the NFL, you understand that's a lead over there. There's a lot of things that slide in college football that would never, ever, ever slide in the NFL. I'll just give you a coaching example real quick. Go back to what Eberflus did, who was the head coach of the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. He doesn't use the timeout with around 30 seconds to go, lets the clock run out, only gets one play off at the buzzer, and the Bears lose a game they could have won. I've seen coaches all across college make clock management mistakes all the time and kind of get away with it. They get blasted. But man, if you do that in the NFL, you get fired. It's the elite of the elite up there. They let no BS go. And I say all that to say, if that's the top notch, where are they getting their players from? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. According to Sports Source Analytics, in the 2024 NFL draft, and I know that the 2025 draft is around the corner, they just had the combine a couple weeks ago, but we'll go back to the most recent draft. The SEC draft picks by conference. The SEC brings in 59. Coming in at second is the Pac 12, which is no longer even a league. Then you have the Big 10 at 42, the ACC with 41, the Big 12 with 31, and then it really kind of gets on down to some conferences that aren't even they're not even worth talking about, right? So I'm going to say it again if you're listening on audio. SEC leading the way. 59 draft picks by the conference. Next is the Pac 12 at 43. Then there's the Big 10 at 42. If you're asking yourself, okay, well, what did the first round look like? Did the SEC just stack up in the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round? Oh, no. Once again, like always, the SEC leads with 11. 11 of the 32 picks in the first round of the NFL draft were from the SEC, and second was the Pac 12 with 8. Now, how do we get there, though, right? Like, how do you get that level of talent? Well, you got to recruit. So I want to take a quick look at the rankings from 247's cycle last year. So these are what the ended up being the rankings on last year's high school cycle from 247 Sports. You have Texas at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Alabama at number 3, Ohio State at number 4, Oregon at 5, Michigan at 6, and 5 and 7 Auburn at number 7. So count it with me, folks. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the top 7 are from the SEC, and the other 3 are from the Big 10. Okay. And make no mistake about it, I'm not here to say the Big 10 sucks. This is not a SEC versus all these other conferences type things. We're going to do some comparing here, but I give the Big 10 full credit. It's the second best conference in football, and it's close. It's close. But I'm sick of this narrative that the SEC is just not it. If we go on down the rankings, Florida number 8. Despite all the they thought they might have been firing their head coach in the middle of the season. Auburn goes 5-7. Their head coach is on the hot seat. Somehow they're still 7th and 8th. Man, these SEC schools must attract a lot of talent. A&M, number 9. LSU, number 10. Tennessee, 11. Notre Dame, 12. Miami, 13. USC, 14. And then rounding it out, you've got Penn State at 15. Ole Miss at 16. Oklahoma, 17. South Carolina, 18. Florida State, 19. Missouri, 20. Georgia Tech, 21. Nebraska, 22. Washington at 23. TCU and Maryland at 24 and 25. So some notes on this top 25 of recruiting. And again, this is according to last year's cycle of 247 Sports. The SEC had 12 teams, 12 of their 16 teams in the top 25, including a team in the top 10 in Auburn that went 5-7. Think about that. 5-7, 4 straight losing seasons, and they finished in the top 10 in back-to-back years. No, they must have some pretty good resources. People must really want to come play at a school like Auburn. Maybe they just want to play in the SEC, huh? Because Auburn hasn't been winning games. Kentucky and Mississippi State finished 28th and 29th. I want to point out to you guys that Mississippi State won 2 freaking games and got demolished at home to Toledo. And they still finished in the top 30 in recruiting. Kentucky, 4-8, a basketball school, still finished in 28th. To be fair, the Big Ten also had a good showing. They had 8 teams in the top 25. I will say it again, the second best conference, and it's not, they're right there with the SEC, but the SEC is a little bit better. The ACC with 3 teams in the top 25. Now, I thought this was interesting. Georgia Tech, Miami, and Florida State. Where are those 3 teams located? Georgia Tech was actually a founding member of the SEC. And then Miami and FSU also located in the Southeast. Clemson finished 26, right outside the top 25. Where's Clemson located? Who's their biggest arch rival? Oh, an SEC school. Matter of fact, let's look at this real quick. Georgia Tech, biggest arch rival? Georgia, SEC school. Miami, their biggest rival is probably FSU. So we'll give them that, the ACC school. FSU, who's their biggest rival? Florida, an SEC school. So they're in a part of the country where they got everything the SEC has, but they're just not in the league. And they're trying to, by the way. They're trying to get into the SEC, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And I'll get some more of that in a second when I talk about Danny Cannell. SEC landed 17 of the 32 5-stars. If you are not familiar with the way the recruiting rankings work, the recruiting services pick 32 5-stars because there are 32 first-round picks in the NFL draft. And they are trying to guess who those picks will be. Who are the top most 32 talented players in the country. 17 of those guys, 17 of them went to an SEC school. Man, it seems to me whether we look at draft picks, whether we look at recruiting rankings, and obviously those things go hand in hand because you recruit the good players, but then you have to develop them. Well, if we look at the draft, the argument can't be made that they're not being developed because the NFL GMs are taking them. And it's been that way. It's been that way. The SEC for 18 straight years has led the NFL. 18 straight years has led the NFL draft in picks by conference. So the NFL GMs, the owners, the coaches, and the best league in the world, they all want kids from the SEC. And where do the best kids in high school want to go to, according to what we're looking at right here in front of our eyes? The SEC or the Big Ten? So when you're talking about talent, it's obvious to me that it's all in the southeastern part of the country. I don't really know how you can debate that looking at the numbers that we have in front of us. Even the teams that are not actually in the SEC are based in the SEC part of the country. This is where the best football is at. The Southeast is where the best football is played. It's where the best athletes are played. Don't let anybody tell you any different because, quite frankly, the numbers don't lie, guys. They're right here in front of us. But again, it's not just about talent. Can you develop the talent? Can you develop the talent? It appears you can. because the NFL GMs, the NFL head coaches, they sure do want them. So the SEC has the ability to go get the best players out of high school and then develop them up into the best league. Doesn't appear to be that down to me as far as developing talent, as far as the actual talent on the field. Appears to be top notch to me. And if you don't agree with me, do you disagree with 32 NFL GMs? Do you know football better than them? Danny Cannell. Now, let's get on to quality teams. I want to make this argument as well. Let's look at some of these teams here. Now, I know, and I'm going to give full credit to Ohio State. Ohio State, in my opinion, was the most talented team this year. Ohio State does a great job of recruiting. Michigan, over the past couple of years, has done a great job of recruiting, developing. I think they do an incredible job with the line of scrimmage. They just own the line of scrimmage. The way Michigan did Penn State a couple of years ago was one of my favorite things to watch ever that I've ever seen in college football. Just pound. They didn't throw the ball the entire second half. I love that. So I'm giving my credit to the Big Ten. But when you tell me that the SEC has fallen off because they didn't win a national championship, I'm going to actually leave out. I do have a list that I could go to of the past 30 national champions and how many of those are SEC. And again, even the ones that aren't, your Florida States or Clemson's, where are they located? What conference are they trying to get into? Oh, yeah, the Southeast. But let's take a look at this. You're telling me the SEC is down. Well, hell, Texas made a deep playoff run, made the Final Four. They won 13 games overall. Georgia won 11 games, going 11-3, made the playoff. Tennessee, 10-3, playoff appearance. They did lose on the road to a Big Ten team, the national champs. Full credit to Ohio State, but you can't tell me Tennessee's down and they suck. Alabama won 9 games. LSU won 9 games. Ole Miss won 10 games. Missouri won 10 games. Hell, South Carolina popped up and won 9 games. So I'm looking at 8 teams with at least 9 wins. So half of the conference had at least 9 wins. Texas A&M goes 8-5 with a first-year head coach. I find that to be pretty impressive. Florida went 8-5 despite playing the toughest schedule I've ever seen, and was definitely, by the numbers, the toughest schedule in the country last year. So I've got 8 teams that won at least 9 games. I've got 2 more that won 8 under pretty, trying scenarios, like a first-year coach and what Mike Elko had to clean up at Texas A&M, cleaning up the mess that was left by the previous man than Jimbo Fisher. 8-5 is pretty impressive, and I'm willing to bet that A&M is going to have better seasons than 8-5 in the future. Florida, 8-5, with that ridiculous schedule, with all the noise around Billy Napier, but somehow, some way, they get it together at the end of the season. Could it be because they have a lot of talented players and Billy Napier is actually a really good coach? He's just in a tough league and he played a ridiculous schedule. And that if I plopped Florida in the ACC, that they would murder. If I plopped A&M in there, they would murder. I would make the argument that an Auburn team that went 5-7 and lost a whole bunch of close games to Cal. They had 5 turnovers versus Cal. Just gave them the game. You can call it what you want. They gave Cal the game, gave Oklahoma the game, gave Arkansas the game. They blew all these games. And an Auburn team that was super talented. And if you look at every metric and every stat outside of wins and losses, which is all that really matters. I'm not a guy that's sitting here saying that wins and losses don't matter. But the point I'm making is, what if I put Auburn in the ACC? I think they make a bowl game. I think they win 8-9 games for sure. You really couldn't convince me otherwise. But that's the SEC, buddy. Auburn lost a whole bunch of one-possession games in a very tough league. And they finished at the bottom of this league. And I think that they could go in there and do the same thing that a team like Colorado did in the Big 12. They could easily win 9-10 games in the ACC last year. What would South Carolina done in the ACC? What would Ole Miss have done? LSU, Alabama, Tennessee. I mean, we could go on for days with this. So when I see people using the national championship, not including an SEC team and taking those kind of shots, I look at the conference, you tell me the SEC's down, I see a bunch of quality teams. I almost have to ask myself the question, are these teams so good they kind of beat up on each other? I mean, Ole Miss, 5-3 in the conference. They went down to Gainesville. Everybody had penciled in a win for Ole Miss. No, sir, they got DJ Lagway, a freaking 5-star. A 5-star quarterback. There's no off. You went to the swamp where there's 90,000 people. There's no off days in this league. Half the league won 9 games. Come on now. Come on now. You're telling me the league is down, but I'm looking and I see a litany of quality teams. And to further drive that point home, I'm going to take a look really quick at the overall, what every team's record was in the SEC. And at the very, very bottom here, I've got Oklahoma, who did make a bowl game, but they finished with a losing record of 6-7. Auburn 5-7, Kentucky 4-8, and Mississippi State 2-10. So you had 4 teams that finished with a losing record, and you had 3 teams that didn't make a bowl. One of those in Auburn that missed it by 1 game and gave that away. Just gave that away. They should have made a bowl game. Okay, so Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Auburn. Those are your 3 teams out of 16 that don't make a bowl game. And then I've got half the league won 9 games, and you're telling me the league is down. I have a hard time with it. I have a real hard time with it when I look at all the numbers on the football side. That narrative, it just doesn't hold up. Before I get out of here, I'm going to get onto this basketball really quick. Our guy Greg Sankey, commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, put Danny Cannell in a body bag, okay? So Danny Cannell, if you don't know, he's out there saying that the SEC is overrated and that ESPN and Disney are propping up the SEC because of their TV deal. And I'll be fair to say there's probably some of that going on, right? They're probably hyping it up a little bit because they want you to watch their product. That's called advertising. But this bias that he's claiming, Danny said the smartest man in basketball was saying out loud what I've been thinking for 3 months. And he quote tweeted Ken Pomp saying the SEC is probably overrated. Now, Greg Sankey quote tweeted that and said, I'm going to explain why the SEC is overrated. He had a little bit of sarcasm in his tweet. I could sense it. 30 wins, 4 losses versus the ACC. 14 wins, 2 losses versus the Big 12. 10 wins, and this is basketball, by the way. I don't know if I clarified that. We're now onto the basketball side of things. 10 wins, 9 losses versus the Big 10. 185 wins and 23 losses in the non-conference games. Boy. So now you're trying to say the SEC is overrated in basketball. A commission's here to say, well, hold on. If we're overrated, then what are all these other conferences? Because judging off the numbers, it looks like the SEC is kicking everybody's ass. At least 11 teams will make the tournament. I'm interested to see how a team like Arkansas and Oklahoma do this week. I know they're on the bubble. But let's pull up the SEC basketball standings and read through some of these records of quality teams on the basketball side of things. And then I have a point I want to make on that as well. So as I take a look at the basketball standings here, Auburn is 27-4 overall. Florida is 27-4 overall. Alabama's 24-7. Tennessee's 25-6. A&M's 22-9. Kentucky's 21-10. Missouri's 21-10. Ole Miss is 21-10. Mississippi State's 20-11. Vanderbilt's 20-11. Georgia's 20-11. And then we get into those bubble teams that I've mentioned in Arkansas and Oklahoma. Texas, LSU, and South Carolina have all struggled this year with subpar records. So majority of the conference has won 20 games, okay? There's only 3 teams in this 16-team league that haven't won at least 19. When did this happen? Because I'll confess the SEC used to not care about basketball. But you saw Auburn invest in Bruce Pearl, which then forced, after he built up another SEC program in Tennessee, which then forced Alabama to invest and go get Nate Oates. They can't have their arch rival one up them, right? And now he's picked Alabama up and they're running. LSU with Will Wade, I know how it ended, but they got serious all of a sudden. Ole Miss gets serious with Chris Beard all of a sudden. Mississippi State, they can't let Ole Miss do that. Look at Mississippi State having a standout year. You know what Kentucky is. They're a college basketball blue blood. The SEC tournament used to be called the Kentucky Invitational. They're coming into that thing this year is like a 6 seed or something. No one's calling it that now, are they? No, because the entire league got invested in basketball. And the moment the SEC got invested in basketball, it turned around. And now all of a sudden, the numbers show that the SEC is the best basketball conference in the country. And to really drive that point home, the regular season champ of the SEC this year, the Auburn Tigers, top 25 wins this season, 10. The entire ACC with 7. There's not a whole lot left to say here. That's one team, the conference champ, with more top 25 wins than the basketball conference that I was told, and rightfully so when I was growing up, ran the show. Well, what happened? I'll tell you what happened, guys. People got invested. SEC athletic directors, SEC boosters got invested. They got serious about spending NIL money on basketball. And all of a sudden, the SEC dominates that too. It's about investment. I'm an Auburn fan, obviously, right? Okay. I think back to Auburn's last 2 home games versus Texas A&M, one of which with an interim head coach in Carnell Cadillac Williams. Don't take my word for it. Go back and watch the first 5 minutes. Go watch the pregame entrance to that game. Okay. Auburn had won 4 games at that point. That was a 4-7 football team, maybe 4-6. 4-6, I do believe. A&M wasn't that good either. This was the year they fired Jimbo, okay? Or maybe he had one more year, but he was definitely on the hot seat. Yeah, he lasted one more year. Go back and watch the entrance to that game. Go back and watch Auburn run onto the field. This isn't me saying this as an Auburn fan. It got national recognition. The atmosphere was out of this world. Why? Because an all-time great player for that school was coming back as the interim head coach. In a lot of situations, that doesn't happen. And I'm going to give my full credit to a team like Nebraska in the Big Ten, who has sold out for years and years and years, has had at full capacity in their stadium. Ohio State, Michigan, one of the best rivalries in college football, right up there with the Iron Bowl. I'll admit I'm biased on that one, okay? But the point I'm making is the investment, how much the fans care. Then the next time A&M came to Auburn, again, Auburn sucked. Auburn's a 4-win team again. Go back and watch the last 5 minutes of that game and the overtimes that took place. And I'm not trying to say Auburn fans are better than anybody else. I think they're some of the best fans in the country. But again, I just give my credit to Nebraska and everybody else. But that's all across, man. Look at South Carolina. South Carolina ain't never won nothing. But when they play Sandstorm, that's 85,000 people losing their shit, and they're all invested, man. It just means I don't want to use the tagline. It almost just came naturally right there. So it's not a knock on these other conferences, but you're telling me the SEC is down, and I'm seeing 90,000 people at every game every week. So I'm seeing high draft picks. Okay? More draft picks than any other conference. 18 straight years. Most first rounders year after year after year. So the NFL's telling me you've got the best players. I'm seeing you dominate the high school recruiting rankings. Tell me that you're getting the best players to come to your school. They're probably staying somewhat close to home and coming from your part of the country. Then you're developing them into NFL players. Then I'm seeing the buy-in, whether it be basketball or football, and the investment from fan bases that even their teams suck, they still show up 90,000 strong and cheer their ass off. How is this league down? What are y'all talking about? That makes no sense. You're just mad because the SEC is dominated for so long, you don't know what else to say. So because Saban retired and Kirby didn't three-peat, you want to take your little shots. I'm not buying it, man. I'm not buying it. And again, full credit. There are other good conferences. Is college football not going towards the Big Ten and then what SEC, whatever they want? They're the 2 best leagues. Okay? Quit telling me it's down. It's weird for somebody like Danny Cannell to continue to wave the flag of the ACC and say the SEC is overrated when his Florida State Seminoles would do anything to get into the SEC. Anything. They're trying their best. They're in court trying to make it happen. What are you talking about, brother? What are you talking about? Y'all were the basketball league, and one of the worst college basketball programs of all time in Auburn has dominated your league this year by statistics. Dominated it. It's right here on the screen. I didn't make this stat up. So what are we talking about? And I got this from at Chris Mahler on Twitter. Want to give him his props. I'm just not seeing it, guys. I'm just not seeing it. And I'll leave it off this on baseball. I've interviewed multiple professional baseball players. It's up on my channel over at the Uptempo podcast that have played at LSU, that have played at Auburn, that have played at Florida. They all say the same thing. They said, man, when I got into the minors and I was in like single A, I raked. I was in rookie ball, I raked. And then I got up into double A and it felt like the SEC. They said triple A in the majors is when it started to feel a little bit different than college. So what does that tell me? It tells me the SEC is like double A quality ball. Looking at the top 25 every single year of college baseball, is it not dominated by like half of it is the SEC? So softball, gymnastics, I could really do the same thing. At the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. The SEC is the best athletic conference in the country. The Big Ten's right there, and that's why both of them are forming together. They're going to dictate college sports for the next 5-10 years in the future because they hold all the cards because they're the best leagues. So if you're telling me that the SEC has slipped up a little bit, maybe in football it's slipped a little bit, it's jumped in basketball, right? Maybe the NIL situation in football has kind of evened the playing field out some, and I'm cool with that. But again, let's not act like there's not quality football teams in the SEC. I mean, goodness gracious, you see it right here. Look, there's a lot of people out there that are mad that the Southeastern Conference has dominated the college sports landscape for a long time. And my message to you guys is stay mad, bitches, because it's not going to change. It's not going to change. It's going to continue to be this way because of the investment, because of the talent. Because when I look over at a team like Cal or a team like USC or UCLA, okay, I don't see a lot of people in the stands. USC is supposed to be this big, proud program. Where y'all at? The fans. Where's the investment? Where's the NIL investment, USC? Where were they in these recruiting rankings? 14th? For USC? 14th. Okay. I hear you. You keep telling me the SEC is not this, it's not that, it's overrated. I'm not buying it. The numbers aren't buying it. You can sell that somewhere else because we're certainly not going to do it right here at the Just a Sec Pod. And if you think I'm being biased, argue with the numbers. Look, smash that like button, sub to the channel if you haven't. I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm out of here. Peace.